Good afternoon. Welcome to the Empower Hour show with holistic codependency coach moi, Debbie Sherrick, and we're having this new Empower Hour Google Hangout today, trying it at noon, because a lot of people said they really like enjoying watching some of the Google Hangouts during their lunch hour. So we decided to mix it up a little bit today and have it at noon. So welcome. I am Debbie Sherrick with Inside Out Wellness Coach. And today I have Laura Bookbinder from Yoga Bliss. Laura. Hi, Laura.
Nice. Thanks for having me, Deb.
I always love doing the Google Hangouts with you, girl.
Me too. It's so much fun.
Yay. So we're really excited about today's show because today, each month I pick a topic about having to do with healing of recovery and particularly codependency issues. And today we're going to be talking about anger and resentment, and being done with it, why we do it, how we handle anger, how we should be handling it, and also some really holistic ways of handling it and how it affects us emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically in our lives. So one of the things about anger and resentment is that those in recovery and healing from codependency behaviors have a lot of anger and resentment. Even if we don't feel like we do, we do. So it is part of recovery, and it is part of healing. It's a part of our moving forward, is knowing how to deal with our anger and resentment. And so today, as we talk about that, we're going to talk about how anger, is not a bad emotion. And sometimes we feel guilty depending on the message that we got with anger growing up. Sometimes we feel guilty feeling angry, or that we feel like it's a wrong emotion, or we just plain don't know how to handle it and what to do with it, so it comes out sideways or maybe wrong ways and hurts ourselves and hurts others. But anger is necessary in our healing process because it helps us get from denial to acceptance and working through having that forgiveness that we need towards others and towards ourselves. So, as I said a minute ago or a few seconds ago, anger is not a wrong emotion. Even God said, be angry, but sin not. So that it's all right. There is justifiable, righteous anger, things that we should get angry about. The key is that we don't want to carry it on into sin where as I said, we're hurting others or hurting ourselves. However, it also says in Proverbs that anger resides in the bosom of fools. So we don't want anger to reside within our soul, within our heart, within our body, where we become fools because we're just angry all the time and resentful all the time. So we want to know how to process through that and how to handle anger. There's also another scripture in Proverbs that I love that says, don't keep company with an angry man, lest it becomes a snare to your soul and you become like them. So we're going to talk about that today too, that maybe you're living with someone or in a relationship with someone who is just walking around angry, pissed off, resentful all the time, and you are having a hard time not picking up on that energy or detaching from that, or maybe taking it personal. And how do you live with someone who's constantly angry and resentful? And as codependents, we can be thermostats to other people's behaviors, and we can become sponges, picking up on all their emotions and all their feelings because we don't have that. We're so enmeshed with what's going on with those that we loved, and we have a hard time, separating ourselves from that. So we're going to talk about that today too. So I guess I'm going to start out, Laura, and then you can share. We really want this to flow. We were talking about it earlier, about anger and resentment, and what an important topic this is, what an important show this is, and actually we could probably do a series on anger and resentment because there's so much to talk about it with, and there's so much we're excited to share with you because we want to also share what are some really healthy, holistic ways that we can handle being angry and being resentful and what to do with it. So as Laura and I were talking earlier today and last week, we were talking about how we grew up and the messages that we got about anger. And I asked Laura to do the Google Hangout, the Empower Hour show with me today, because she's such a phenomenal yogi, and yoga and breath work and visualization and meditation is such a great way to deal with anger and shift that emotion and that energy out of the body and deal with it. So it's a great healing modality, and Laura is so good with that. So I want to.
Thank you. Yeah, I personally, healed myself from some past anger through meditation, through yoga, through breath work, and I've moved through to feel more empowered and at peace. So I'm excited to share with everyone some of the tools.
And I love that, Laura, because we want to know, we're going to talk about different ways to handle anger in our body. We're going to talk about the energy of anger. And I know I've been in some of your yoga classes, and I know how maybe I've walked in there in a bad mood, or walked in dealing with some anger, or just not in a good space. And I love how you do some of the poses that you do, and some of the visualization and affirmations and breath work that you do, is that I could just feel, my emotions, which are energy in motion. I could feel those emotions shift and left feeling so peaceful. So, yeah, it's just a great tool, and you're so good at that.
Thank you so much.
Now, I'm going to start out sharing about my own testimony, as I always like to share about my own life and my own experiences and hopes, and to hopefully inspire others, and how my experience with anger. And I grew up in such a in my physically abusive home with my alcoholic father, who used anger and rage to control us. And I was sharing with Laura earlier that it's so ironic, nothing's by mistake, that when I decided to have this a couple weeks ago as the topic, and I always do my Empower Hours on a Tuesday, that when I chose anger and resentment for August 19th, that it didn't dawn on me till a few days ago that today's my dad's birthday. So he's not with us any longer. He's, I'm sure up in heaven playing his banjo and singing songs and Willie Nelson songs and all, and having a great time. But to me, it's just amazing how I chose to do anger and resentment on my dad's birthday, because my first experience with dealing with anger was about the anger and resentment I had towards my father in my childhood and growing up in such an abusive home. So my experience with anger was that because my father used anger so much to control and keep the house in order and to keep us in fear, that to me, anger was a bad emotion. It wasn't okay to show anger. I didn't know how to show anger in an appropriate way. And we're going to also discuss, how do we appropriately show anger and talk about it without it, there's not, we don't just stuff it, and then we don't just rage and scream and holler either. There's some appropriate ways to handle anger. So I was not, growing up in my dysfunctional alcoholic codependent home, there were not appropriate boundaries, and there were not appropriate ways of expressing anger. So I never really allowed myself to show anger. And what happened is I got on into my young adulthood, and when I first started getting into healing and recovery, when we turn our anger inward and we don't feel anger, it turns to sadness and depression. And really, I believe that sadness and depression is just anger turned inwards, that there is anger with that, and that we're not allowing ourselves to do that. So I had to learn how to get angry and how to get that anger out, all that anger, I was so numb to it. And when we do that, you know, that GPS, which I call gaining personal strength, our GPS is how we get, when we listen to that, our gut and our feeling. Because I had stuffed anger for so many years, I really had no GPS for anger. In other words, when there was situations or relationships that I was in and I was being treated badly, I didn't even know it appropriate to get angry about it. Instead, I went right to victim, right to sadness, right to depression about it instead of getting angry. So I had to learn the appropriate emotion to feel when I was being violated, that it was okay to get angry and how to express that anger. So my journey and my learning was when I started working through the anger of my childhood and the anger from my little girl that was in there, and I started working through that, man, I was just like a volcano that erupted. I had so much anger. I was just like, you know, it was like dredging the Mississippi River, you know, just bringing all of that guck up from the bottom of the pit. Once I started feeling that and working through that anger, it just really came out. I was really scared of it at first because I couldn't believe how angry I was feeling when I started allowing myself to feel it and work through that. So that was my experience with, and I'm going to talk a little further about how I did deal with it, working through that anger and allowing myself to get angry. And as I said earlier, when we talk about anger, you know, we have all of our emotions are okay. You know, we want to feel the sadness, we want to feel the fear, we want to be okay and give ourselves permission to feel the anger, to feel the grieving, to get to the place of acceptance. We want to go through those stages of healing. It's when we get stuck in them that's unhealthy for us. We want to know, how can we process through anger? How can we not allow that to go into roots and chunks of resentment and bitterness? How can we not get stuck in grieving and sadness and stay there for months and years? We want to be able to process through our emotions so we can get to happiness and joy. So tell me, Laura, about, you know, just, I really don't know. I don't think you and I talked about this, but tell me about your experience growing up, or your, you know, experience with anger and resentment in your life with relationships.
Absolutely. I just want to add to what you were talking about, your GPS system, your internal guidance system. Sometimes you don't even realize that you're angry or that you have any issues in that area until you turn inward and just listen to what's going on. Or maybe it comes out through an outburst, or you know, when you're driving through traffic or something little happens and you realize, whoa, what just happened? I got extremely angry at the littlest things. Mm-hmm. So you have to pay attention to those situations, and then until you figure it out, then you'll know, like, where is it stemming from? Where is it coming from? So I think it's important to sit down and meditate, or just go back into those situations where you felt those little outbursts of anger. But yeah, personally, I never like to show my anger. I'm naturally shy, and I thought it was, you know, I kind of felt shame or guilty for showing my anger. Mm-hmm. So I kind of stuffed it down into sadness growing up, got depressed, had mono, which is a sign of not loving themselves, not loving yourself. And then once I found yoga, my intention on the mat sometimes was to let go of anger. And I had some amazing releases through my practice in yoga. Just allowing myself to feel the emotions, allowing myself to get all fired up and angry, and maybe some days I would cry off the mat, or I would have all this pent-up energy, which forced me to be more confident and be more powerful and empowered. And I let go of the sadness, I let go of the depression, and I learned this technique. You take a washcloth or anything like a wet paper towel, and you can hit it against the door as hard as you can, because I don't like to express myself through the throat chakra as much as physical. So I like to dance it out. I put on loud music, start singing, and my intention was to release that stuck energy and anger. Or I'll hit the towel against the door as hard as I can. Or like you were talking about, Debbie, earlier, about running, going for a long run, and just moving that energy out of the body so that you can be more at peace and feel much better.
When you, in your family of origin, Laura, you said that you didn't show anger growing up. Was anger an emotion in your family that was kind of subtly taught that it was not appropriate?
Absolutely. Well, that's my take on it, for sure. My mom would call it outbursts. Oh, he's having an outburst, or she's having an outburst. And then, you know, my brother and sister and I will run to our room, slam the door, and that would be it. And we go into our own little space and deal with it ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, it's a lot of homes are like that, that it's pretty common that people that don't handle feelings and emotions appropriately, that it was a bad thing to get angry or even punished if it, you know, if we, you know, I had such mixed messages that we weren't allowed to fight and show anger. Us, you know, me and my siblings, we weren't allowed to show anger or yell or get angry. We would be punished if we showed anger.
Wow.
However, then my father, who was the abuser and the angry person all the time when he was drunk, you know, so we had such mixed double messages about anger. And, you know, I think this is a good place to talk about how, when we talk about children, you know, when I have clients that have little children, I love kids, and I know what the effects that it had on me to grow up in a dysfunctional home. So it's really important to me to get across to them that to take care of their children emotionally when there is dysfunction in the home, or there's addiction in the home, or abuse in the home, how important it is, the effect that it is having on your children, which can be a whole other show. I think I need to do a show on that, because I love talking about little children and, you know, what they're seeing and what they're feeling. But it's so important to allow our children today to have their emotions. So if they're showing anger, to not shame them and punish them and tell them it's wrong, you know, to not act like that, but to teach them appropriate ways, you know, give them permission. Okay, you know, I see that you're feeling mad. I see that you're really mad. What is it that you're mad about? And allowing them to talk about that, but teaching them that it's not okay to get violent or destroy property or toys or things like that when they're angry, but giving them permission to feel whatever feeling they're feeling, whether it be sad, anger, whatever, because, you know, as we said, we grew up in homes that anger was not appropriate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or there's homes where everybody's angry. You know, that's the only way they communicate. The whole family's angry, and they scream and holler and cuss at each other, you know, and throw things, and different ways that we can, you know, grow up in angry homes. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up today was about, you know, talking about what about if we're in a situation, we're in a relationship, maybe we're in a very dysfunctional relationship, maybe we have addicts in our life that we're married to, or our children are addicts, or, you know, we're dealing with addiction in the family, or what if we're dealing with abuse in the family, that we have situations that we are constantly getting angry about, and we just seem like, we try to work through that anger and that resentment because of what someone did or behavior of someone else, and yet we work through that until the next incident, and then something else happens, or something else is said to hurt our feelings, or something else is done to hurt our feelings, and we, in taking that personal, and like, how do we do that? How do we handle anger and resentment when it's constantly things that are happening in our life? And you said something earlier today, Laura, and I hope you remember. I can't remember what it was, but we were talking about. Oh, share what you were talking about victim.
Oh, okay. So, yes, feeling victim drives me nuts now. I used to do that. And when I see other people feeling victim, it drives me crazy, because I know it's about fixing yourself first, self-love.
Right.
Figuring out what's going on and not taking things personally. So if you're living with someone who has an addictive personality, or you're very sensitive to that person's energy, and if they're angry, you're angry, or if they're happy, you're happy, you don't get anywhere. You need to step up. You're in control of your emotions. You're in control of your environment. And if you don't take care of it yourself, you'll always play victim, and it's not a good place to be.
Right.
So I definitely think you need to feel the emotions and not blame other people for your anger.
Right.
You have to figure out where it's coming from and release it to move forward.
And that, I love that, because when we talk about, we need to honor and feel our emotions. So we need to take responsibility. Say, I'm feeling angry, and we're going to talk a little bit later about how we handle that in an appropriate way. But when we talk about codependence, because this show is about codependency, so when we talk about the behavior of codependence, one of the things that tend to happen in codependent relationships is that they're so enmeshed with others' emotions. And I used to call that, being a thermostat. Like, if my significant other was happy and treating me good and doing everything that I felt was okay in the way that he should be acting, then I was happy. And, I was in a good mood and felt good that day and had joy. But if that person relapsed or raged at me or said something to hurt my feelings, all of a sudden I would spiral. And so that is a typical codependent behavior, and that's that enmeshment emotionally, not being able to detach from other people's behavior and realize, that is their stuff. They've got their own set of issues they're dealing with. This is not about me. I am not going to take this personal. Neither am I going to go into anger and revenge towards them and punish them for the way that they've treated me and what's going on. And we're in a minute, I'm going to talk about ways that we handle anger, and one of those ways is withdrawing, and the silent treatment and withholding love is a way that some people in codependent relationships handle anger. And it's not a healthy way to handle anger. It's avoidance. You're saying something or you're doing something to upset me. I don't like the way you treat me. So I'm going to withhold love. I'm going to pull away. I'm going to stay silent and withdraw my love. And that's a passive-aggressive way of showing anger. And it only hurts ourselves when we do that. It's just not a healthy way to handle. But when we're in a situation like that, where there's something constantly going on, we need to have these tools to be able to detach, to be able to protect ourselves and say, knowing every situation's different. When depending on what exactly is going on. You know, when I'm working with clients, if it's, and we're working on boundaries, if it's something that is, you know, physically or really verbally abusive, where, you know, screaming and raging, and, you know, that's not appropriate behavior. To be able to set boundaries with that, that you may have to really detach from that person and withdraw your energy from that person because it's not safe for you to be around. The key is being able to detach in love and not detach in anger and stay angry and resentful while you're detaching, because you're, you know, that's about you, and you want to work through the anger and the resentment for your own health, for your own peace, for your own being able to be healthy spiritually, emotionally, and physically. That you want to be able to detach and set boundaries with inappropriate behavior and remove yourself from that situation, however you need to do that, in order to stay safe. Because, you know, we all want to be around positive, joyful, happy people that have good energy and that are fun to be around, and that inspire us and that are safe to be around. Very important for us to be around safe people. And sometimes we have to really detach from people that aren't safe with anger and rage. And those people that haven't dealt with their anger, that it comes out sideways. We were talking earlier, Laura, about, and I think you brought this up a second ago, about, you know, watching how you handle anger, that if the way that you're reacting does not warrant what's going on, then you know you have a lot of old anger and resentment that you haven't dealt with yet. So let's say that you, let's use traffic, for instance. You were talking about traffic earlier, Laura.
Yeah. So it happens all the time. I've been with friends. I do it myself. You know, you're driving along and someone cuts you off and you go crazy. You swear, you just act as if someone stabbed you in the back. But it's such an overreaction that you know it's not the guy that cut you off that's making you so angry. It's from your past, maybe from growing up, maybe from a past relationship that you haven't dealt with yet. You haven't felt that anger yet. You haven't allowed yourself to be present enough to realize that something's going on deep within. And when those little things happen, you overreact. And then that's the place where you want to, you know, recognize or ask yourself, why is this happening? And use some of the tools that we're going to go over soon to let it go and release it.
Yeah, and I think we really need to pay attention, you know, when we're working on ourselves and wanting to get healthier and how we react to things, and dealing with, you know, if we have where a person has a lot of anger and rage, and that we want to see, like, if a little incident happens, you know, like maybe you're in the grocery store and someone banged into you in the back, you know, of course, you know, you're going to be like upset, like, oh, you know, I can't believe that this person, you know, but it shouldn't be something where you go into this huge anger rage thing, you know. Or if someone else that you love, or, you know, a friend or something is doing something that, you know, you don't agree with, that you would allow it to bother you, and you go into this huge anger and resentment thing and rage, and you take it personally. So we need to watch, how are we getting overly angry about situations that really don't warrant that much of an expression of that much rage and anger and fury, that we're overreacting to that. And what's that about? That has to do with us. And the other thing you mentioned earlier too, I think is so important, is that we need to really be aware of, which is so common with codependency behavior, is victim, martyr, and blaming. You know, that they made me feel angry. I'm angry at you because you did this last week or last month, or you continue to speak to me this way, you continue to do this. And, you know, it doesn't mean that we don't get angry. It's that, how long do we hold on to that? That a lot of times, that choosing, you know, and this is tough teaching right here. This is really, you know, tough listening to this, but so many times we hold on to that anger and that resentment towards other people because we're addicted to being a martyr. We're addicted to being victim. You know, victim can be our drug of choice. That we are so, playing victim is so familiar to us. We've done it for so many years that we don't even recognize that we're doing it. So we are constantly walking around drained with this anger and resentment because we're blaming someone else in our life of making us feel that way because of what they're doing. And you know, we need to look at that if we're doing that. That we have, once we get angry about a situation or something, then we have the choice to take the responsibility to shift that energy and realize how am I going to get out of this, and what am I going to do for myself to be healthy, that I'm not holding this anger and resentment within me anymore, and to get to the place where, you know what, this doesn't feel good anymore. I don't want to blame this person anymore. I want to, this person's over here enjoying life and having fun, and I'm over here staying pissed off and angry and resentful at you know, something they're doing. And so again, you know, we need to look, am I just loving being a martyr? Am I just loving blaming and being a victim? And look what this person's doing to me. Poor me. Look at me. And you know, that's very common.
Yes, I used to do that. Hate to admit it, but I always be like, oh my God, what's wrong with that person?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd always blame it on the situation, or I never looked at myself and thought, oh, it's my responsibility to deal with this anger, instead of pushing it on to someone else. So it's important to look at yourself in the mirror and check in daily. Check in why you're angry. Is it because of the situation, or are you taking things personally?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, it's some deep-rooted anger.
I love that book, The Four Agreements, and one of my favorite chapters in there is not taking anything personal. And, you know, that's a great book. If some of you out there are watching this that you've never read that book by Don McGuill, The Four Agreements, it's a very little book, just 4 chapters. And one of the chapters is not taking things personally. You know, it's about 4 agreements that you agree to in life that will make your life so much simpler and easier. And I love that. It's a great chapter for codependents about how we just cannot take other people's actions or behavior and think that it's about us and take it personally. Or when we do take it personally, is it because of our own shame that we're believing it?
Right.
Are we believing that? I can remember I was such a thermostat that if my ex-husband would say something to me before he left for the day that was ugly and unloving, and then leave for work for the day, my whole day was shot. My whole day was ruined. I spiraled down. You know, I would go from feeling angry to feeling depressed to feeling sad to feeling unloved to feeling shamed to feeling not good enough. All those feelings, but it really boiled down to, it was about me and my own self-worth and my own self-esteem. You know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, you know, go through that on a daily basis. It's easier to
Right.
just, you know, react from somebody else and feel that emotion.
Yeah. And so we want to watch that. You know, I go, you know, when we talk about how does it make you feel, you know, go to that good feeling. If I'm not feeling good, what do I need to do to go to that good place, to go to that good feeling? Because I don't want to walk around feeling that anymore. And, you know, one codependent belief is life is hard. It's a false belief. And so we're so used to feeling bad, so used to feeling like life is hard, so used to feeling like relationships are hard. And sometimes we think that love and that pain and feeling bad is love. And it's not. You know, love should feel good most of the time. You know, not that you're not going to have your words and your arguments and all, but, you know, you need to have 2 good forgivers, and each person needs to be able to walk through their resentments and their anger and deal with it. And then again, if it's an ongoing thing where someone is really constantly hurting you, how you're going to handle that. So let's talk now for a minute. I want to talk. I wrote down some things about, you know, throwing out to those of you that are watching the show today, how you deal with anger, and kind of stir some things to get you to look at yourself and and ask yourself, how do we do anger? How do you handle your anger? So think of rating yourself from 1 to 10 on these, 1 being the least, 10 being, oh yeah, I do that all the time. And just see, you know, where you fall into that. So the first one is, how do I deal with anger, is silent treatment, and I withdraw and I avoid it. I talked about that a minute ago. And Laura, you said that's what you used to do, with withdraw and ignore it.
That's my number one. That's my go-to place. Just stuff it down, ignore it, be silent. You know, it was just easier for me to do that.
Yeah. And I think we should talk a minute about why. You know, why do people withdraw and avoid and not deal with it? What's the root of that? That we're feeling angry, but we don't want to deal with it.
I think it all turns back to your self-worth and self-love.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're not loving yourself enough, if you feel worthy enough to feel that emotion, then it's just going to get ignored. And
or maybe you don't, you know, we could also maybe not feel like our needs and our wants are important. So we don't feel that within ourselves, so we don't want to address the anger. Or I think a big one for codependents is afraid of conflict and afraid of rejection and people withdrawing love from us if we address and talk about it. You know, I always say it's so important that we take care of ourselves and take care of our feelings in a loving way. We need to honor ourselves, to thine own self be true, but it's impossible to take care of our feelings and someone else's at the same time. And that's where we really get hung up, is that, okay, I'm feeling this anger about this, you know, situation or this, and I just want to share it, but yet if I do that, this person's going to react, get upset, maybe yell at me, withdraw their love, they're going to be mad at me for days. So we're worried about what the outcome's going to be if we feel our anger, if we address our anger or we bring it up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
However, you know, again, we don't want to think of all or nothing. Like either we rage and scream, you know, at the person and get into this big argument, or we withdraw and withhold. You know, what's the middle ground of that in a healthy way? And I was reading this in one of my journals, and it said, with anger, I can competently deal with anger. I know when I'm feeling it, and I know feeling it isn't wrong. I can feel it whether it's justified or not, and without feeling guilt. I can express anger without attacking the other person, and I can address it with love. And I was thinking about that and how, you know, when we say, I don't have to feel guilty about feeling anger, but I can go to that person in love, not in a place of attack, and say, you know, that behavior, you know, not you made me, but that behavior or that which you said earlier really hurt my feelings. You know, having emotional integrity, really talking about how it really made you feel. You know, and that is honoring and loving ourselves. That really hurt my feelings. I got really angry about that. I felt very violated about that, and I just wanted to let you know that that's how I feel, and I really didn't appreciate it. Now, when we talk like that and we address something that made us angry, we have to watch about our expectations, because we, in codependent behavior, depending on where you are in your recovery too, is that sometimes we'll address a feeling or an emotion, how we're feeling, and we expect the other person to rescue us and take care of that. Like, okay, what are you going to do about that? So it's not about that we're sharing that to change the other person, to control the other person, to manipulate the other person. We're sharing it because we want to appropriately get that out and say, that hurt my feelings. I'm feeling angry, and I need to deal with that. I want to, you know, I'm feeling angry right now. I can't really be around right now, but I'm working through it, and I want to deal with it. And I just want you to know it hurt my feelings. It made me angry, and I'm going to figure it out. So we can do that without getting into defending and debating. We can do that without attacking. We can do that in love. and you know, learn how to do that in an appropriate way. Now, how they react to that, and if they want to start defending themselves about that, which is the second one, when people appropriately express anger about something I did, can I listen without becoming defensive or feeling attacked? So if someone's coming to me about something I did, or I'm going to someone else about something they did, can I listen and say, you know what, I'm going to think about that. I don't know if I agree with it. I don't know. But I'm going to, you know, you shared that with me, so let me think and ponder about that for a little bit. And then go and pray and meditate about what they shared with you. You know, is this their stuff? Is this your stuff? You know, that's taking responsibility. You know, someone addressed me about something. Do I do that? You know, one of the things I'm working on right now is how I speak to my husband, and speaking more. He's very sensitive. He's a very sensitive soul. And yet there's a line there of, you know, being sensitive and taking things too personal. However, I need to be aware of that, and sometimes I'm very flippant with my mouth and can say things that come off to him as being disrespectful. So I want to, you know, really, you know, look at that and watch. And if I do say something that maybe hurt him or disrespectful, I want to immediately be a responsible, mature adult and go to him and say, you know what, honey, that was very disrespectful what I said to you. It probably hurt your feelings, came off, I didn't mean it that way, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I did that to hurt you because I'm mad at you or something. But I want to apologize. I want to say, I'm sorry for that. Will you forgive me for that, and make amends right away? Because the thing about anger and resentment, people are going to hurt our feelings every day, especially those we live with, especially, you know, people that are in really sick behavior are going to hurt our feelings. You know, we've got to learn in healthy ways how to handle that anger and that resentment. So in silent treatment, next is, do you attack and blame others when you're angry? And we talked about that. I don't think we need to, you know, go on and on about, but are you somebody that when you get angry, you dump it on other people, you attack other people, you blame other people? You know, it's their fault you're angry, it's something they did that you're angry. And as Laura said, you know, that victim mentality too, it really gets to me when people just won't get it. They just will not take responsibility and say, you know, when you try to say, you're choosing to stay this, you're choosing to act that way. No one can make us act a certain way. You know, we choose to do that. And when we do blame someone else for our behavior and how we're acting, that's total victim, you know, that they're making us do that. If someone angers me, I seek revenge and payback. So are you someone like that you go and seek revenge and try to pay them back in passive-aggressive ways? Maybe with anger you just cry a lot, or that's how you handle anger. When you get mad, you just go cry. Or that you have sarcasm insults is, you know, underlying a lot of anger that's not been dealt with. One of the things maybe you do is I yell, then walk away. I always have to have the last word, and I stuff it, and I hold grudges. You know, holding grudges is, you know, again, it's about you want to watch for those roots of bitterness, those roots of resentments, those blocks of anger that you just kept building those bricks inside. You just kept letting them build, letting them build, letting them build. And sometimes we think that if we work through our anger and we let go of the anger and we're over here, you know, letting that person off the hook, that means that we're accepting their behavior, that their behavior is okay. We're letting them off the hook. And it doesn't mean that.
It's very toxic. It's very toxic to hold the grudge and stuff it in. And let them off the hook, because it's your responsibility to feel, you know, good. And if you continue to do that, it's a vicious cycle.
It is. And I've had many family members in the past, you know, that we have to decide what kind of a relationship we will have with some of our, you know, people that are still using, or dysfunctional family members or friends. We have to set our boundaries on what kind of relationship we want to have with them, where we're going to go and where we're not going to go. And, you know, I've had to work through a lot of anger and resentment towards family members who've hurt me or stole from me or took advantage or whatever. and I, bless them with love. I've forgiven them. I don't have the anger. However, it doesn't mean that I have to be in full relationship with them or in relationship with them at all. It's just about taking care of myself, that I don't want to walk around with this hunk of grudge and resentment and bitterness, this root of bitterness within me. I don't want to do that. So, or are you someone, I'm unaware of my anger and I avoid it. Then later, unconsciously, I get even or cause a minor or big accident to hurt myself to let the feelings out. Now, that's a biggie. Maybe some of you haven't ever heard about this. We're talking about energy and vibration and holistic, mind-body connection. And that is so true. And so I think, Laura, you're going to talk a little bit more about that, is how when we really don't deal with our anger and we avoid it, that unconsciously get even, and we can have accidents and hurt ourselves on the job or hurt ourselves in the house, to let that energy to get those feelings out.
Yes, that stuck energy that you hold on to, or you hold that grudge, will come out in circumstances. So you might see someone, I think it used to happen to me actually, I used to stub my toe a lot. I used to stub that little stubborn pinky toe. And it was probably due to some form of anger that I wasn't releasing. A lot of people go through accidents, on the job, or, going through their daily lives. The law of attraction, if you're angry on the inside, then that kind of thing is going to happen on the outside, unfortunately, and it will be in your face. And it's your responsibility to do something about it, instead of just, you lash out or you're angry about that accident or the situation, but it's really, that stuck grudge, holding on to that anger that has got to be released somehow. So
there's got to be released somehow. And, anger is such a form of energy that it can't be ignored or destroyed. It's got to be dealt with. So to be converted into another form, we have to know how to do that, or it will, like you said, it is going to come out sideways. And, one way to tell about that is when you do get hurt, if you bang your head or bang your toe, and, do you go from 0 to 10 and get angry really fast and start cussing and swearing and yelling? I think another way of describing that, as we talked, is in traffic. When we're driving that big vehicle, which is like a big weapon, that we feel powerful, that we will, just stay really close and hug somebody's bumper, or cut them off, or get mad when they cut us off, and drive with a lot of aggression. That's a sign of old unresolved anger. That can make us sick. That kind of anger makes us sick. So when we talk about dealing with anger, we talked about taking things personal, about violating or unmet expectations, that we want to make sure that we don't have unrealistic expectations, that we're looking outside of ourselves for someone else to create our happiness, that we need them to act a certain way. And if they don't act a certain way or treat us a certain way, then we're going to be angry and resentful. And we need to watch. That is a red flag, because that's codependent behavior. We need them to be a certain way and treat us a certain way to be happy and not be angry. So I think that's a really big red flag for us to do.
And then I want to add also, I think we're going to get into it in a little bit, but holding on to that anger and not dealing with it causes physical sickness and illness in your body. So, the liver is connected to anger, and a lot of, alcoholics have issues with the liver being overworked, or even if you're not an alcoholic and you're holding on to that anger, you might see some issues holding on to the liver.
Yes, Chinese medicine, the liver is the seat of anger and resentment. And people that have, you can guarantee, people that have a lot of anger and resentment have stagnant liver. So it's important to, you know, as we work holistically, when I work with clients, if they have a lot of anger and resentment, you know, I will use a lot of herbal formulations and things to support that liver, to help move that stagnant anger and resentment out of the liver, because you want to work at a level spiritually, emotionally, and physically in shifting and moving those blocks of anger out. When we talk about ways of you know, people staying angry, I think it's important for us to bring up how anger feels more empowering to stay angry than to go to the sadness and the fear that is under the anger. And so that is more vulnerable. For us to get sad and say, I feel sad, and cry, or I'm afraid, I'm really afraid of what's going to happen, or this isn't going to make, or whatever we're afraid of, to go to those places is very vulnerable. And can be scary to people to not be able to feel that. So a lot of people will stay stuck in anger because it feels more empowering and more powerful to them. And however, we also have the flip side, which was my case, that I was staying in such an abusive, dysfunctional relationship with my addict and staying so sad and depressed about it that I needed to get to angry so I could make some healthy choices for myself. I was you know, not being appropriately angry about how I was being treated. And so my anger, in me getting in touch with my anger and working through that anger, was how I got motivated and gave me the energy to be able to set boundaries, to say no, to get healthier, to draw a line in the sand, and for me to take care of myself. I needed to get angry for that. So you might ask, you know, which side of the coin are you? Let's talk about some ways, Laura, good, healthy ways to get rid of the anger that we want to work through with anger. I think anger is such a heavy emotion. When we don't deal with it, it can drag us down and make us really tired, and it's really a heavy load to carry on the shoulders. I think physical work, physical exercise, and doing things physical is very good about getting anger out. When I was working with my anger, as Laura mentioned earlier, I was running at the time, many years ago, and I would run really early in the morning, you know, before the sun was even coming up, before my kids got up, when the kids were living at home. And I would go out and run, and I would just yell. You know, my neighbors probably thought I was crazy, but I would like scream and yell and make these noises and run faster and just allow that energy or that anger to come up and out of me and move out of my body. The other thing I did was I bought a styrofoam bat, you know, and with a chair, and I would beat that chair and scream and holler what I was angry about and get myself all really worked up and sweating and out of breath, pounding a pillow, you know, throwing a ball against a fence really hard. Punching bags. I've had clients who've had punching bags in their house, you know, where they've gone to get one and just punching that punching bag, you know, that using that physical energy to get that anger up and out of you. Exercise is really a good way of releasing stress, releasing anger and resentment out of the body. Did you want to talk a little bit about that, Laura, about other ways physically to move and shift that anger out of the body?
Yes, I think that is awesome. I think we should teach that to kids in schools. It's so great to just release that energy as fast as you can or as hard as you can. Do the punching bag thing, run, scream, dance, however you want to release that toxic energy. But there's another side to anger that you can release it through breath work. Yes. And a little bit more subtle. Mm-hmm. So in yin yoga, you hold the poses for a long, uncomfortable amount of time. You can hold this pose called pigeon pose. If you want to research pigeon pose, you can see a picture of it. It's all about opening the hips, and we hold a lot of emotions in our hips. Mm-hmm. And I see it on my students' faces sometimes when we're doing that pose or frog pose. Anger starts to come up, or sadness starts to come up. And sometimes I get these dirty looks like, how long is she going to keep me here? But that's another way to release that anger, through your breath and through holding a posture or pose for an uncomfortable amount of time. It's not probably as fun as that run, but if you're feeling a little bit more on the sad or depressed side and you want to be a little bit more gentle with yourself, you can do it through holding the postures and through breath work.
And I love, because there's so many different modalities that we can use with dealing with our anger, and we have to find what works for us. And I love the yelling and hollering. Today there's no way I'm running, my joints won't handle that. But I love the hollering. I remember my therapist used to have me take a deep breath and then really blow out with noises, just blow that anger out. And she would just have me go, and just really shift it and move it out of there and just yell, I'm so angry, I'm so pissed off, and work and get that out of there. I think the important thing as we're closing down today is that we want to encourage everyone out there to make a decision to be done and sick and tired of being angry and resentful all the time, and find a way, a program, find different modalities that you can use for anger and moving through that, and whether it's boundaries. When I'm working with clients, I use so many different things with them, and working with different modalities when we're working with anger and resentment, or when we're working with sadness, because we are a three-part being. And when we're talking about the liver work too, I love the essential oil geranium. Geranium is so good at shifting anger out of the liver, and it supports the liver. I love using bergamot. Bergamot oil helps turn grief and anger into joy, and using them daily. Spruce is so good for grounding and feeling safe. So those are 3 essential oils I like to use when people are processing through. And that anger and resentment, we talk about healing codependency through the chakras. Those lower energies is where codependents tend to live, down in those lower chakras. Relationship, anger, emotion, feelings. And our goal is to raise to higher consciousness, that we want to live in higher consciousness, connected to spirit, following our intuition, keeping our heart pure and clean, and free of anger and resentment each day. And sometimes that can be a daily work. The last thing we want to share is about, sometimes people are angry at God, and we talk about the spiritual work, and they want to blame God. They're mad at God because of things that happened in their life. And when we get to the place to realize, that God doesn't cause or make things happen, everybody has a free will to do as they choose. And anger can really keep us from being close to God. It can keep us from having that spiritual connection to really connect and feel His Spirit and talk to Him, or talk to our angels and our supreme beings. And so, if we feel angry at God, we want to, have people that we can work through that with and talk to about that. So,
yeah, with that, I just wanted to add, if you're having trouble connecting to your higher self or angels, whoever you want to call it, I would do one of those exercises like running or whatever resonates with you, even just shaking your hands, and even laying down on your back, shaking your hands as fast as you can and your feet as hard as you can. Go through that motion, and then let yourself sit and be still and close your eyes. And then that's when you can start to connect to your angels or God, or just your truth, your higher self. Yeah. And I think after you find that movement, it will be easier, that release, to sit still and listen.
Yes. And when doing that too, another great way of anger is writing anger letters. Just writing, great big anger letters. And if a lot of your anger is about your childhood, use your less dominant hand, which is your child hand, in writing those anger letters, if your anger comes from childhood. But writing and then taking them out and burning them and giving them to the universe, releasing them into the ethers, is a great way also, another tool of handling anger. So we're going to close our program today, and I want to give some information that you can find out a little bit more of a lot of the work that I do with codependency, holistic healing, and wellness. at www.insideoutwellnesscoach.com. I am also on LinkedIn, Facebook. I have a lot of closed private codependency groups, support groups on Facebook also. And of course, the Empower Hour show. I also do workshops on healing codependency through the chakras, and an 8-week course that I am working to get online, that 8-week course. And so you can also reach me by email at debbie@insideoutwellnesscoach.com. And Laura, closing, tell us a little bit more about Yoga Bliss.
Okay, yes. So you can find more information about my classes online. My website is yogabliss.info. And I'm on Facebook a lot, so if you want to look up my name, it's Laura Bookbinder. But as you can see on the bottom, it's spelled B-U-C-H. And I'm also on Instagram. My Instagram name is Laura B. Yoga. My email is laura.bookbinder@gmail.com. And I teach locally. I teach workshops. So if you want to stay in touch, please contact me. And I'd love to help in any way I can.
Thanks, Laura. And by the way, we are in Southeast Florida, and Laura does, yoga classes in Southeast Florida. I also do a lot of Skype and online work with codependency across the nation with people that don't live here. So thank you for joining us today. We hope that it was helpful. We could go on and on talking about anger and resentment for a long time, but hopefully we gave some good tips and kind of brought some things to your attention today. So thank you for joining the Empower Hour. Laura, thank you so much for being on with me today. I love you. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste, everyone. Blessings.
Blessings. Bye-bye.
Bye.